And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another victorious episode of the Assembly Call, as tonight the Hoosiers break their losing streak and end what was just such a tumultuous stretch of basketball and non-basketball activities with a 7-point victory against Northwestern. And I think it may actually be time to change the narrative about the piece of the ceiling tile that fell at Assembly Hall. Perhaps it knew after that Purdue game that we just weren't ready to play. And so in the ultimate show of home court advantage, it said, nope, this game is not being played tonight. You guys go on the road against Northwestern, get some payback, get going again, come and do this game a little bit later. I don't know. It's been a crazy season. Who knows? All I know is tonight the Hoosiers came out, and I thought, to kind of channel Tom Crean a little bit, they had a good attitude about their effort tonight, and it led to a 7-point victory. And it was a game where there were a lot of points in this game that were similar to points that we've seen in recent losses for Indiana. For instance, where it was tied at the end of the first half, Indiana's got the ball at the end of the first half. It's been a place where we've either turned it over or gotten a bad shot. Tonight, we got a bucket. We're up 32-30 at halftime. Again, we've been up 36-30 at halftime in a couple of games. The start of second halves have not been good for us. What happens? We come out 7-2, 8-2 run to start the second half, and that really gave us a cushion that we never fully relinquished ever in the second half. They got it down to 4 or 5 a couple of times. That was it, and Indiana held on. Just a really, really good job tonight by the guys. It wasn't pretty. They didn't play great by any means, but they played good, and they played poised at the end, and they made the plays they needed to win the ball game. Feels good to say, doesn't it? Win the ball game. Excellent job tonight by the Hoosiers, winning 61-54. I am Jared Morris, your host of the Assembly Call. I will be joined tonight by Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips. Zach Gropper is on the controls. If you want to join us and get in on the conversation, tweet us with the hashtag Assembly Call, or you can go to assemblycall.com/hangout, and you can leave us a comment there, or leave a question there as a comment, and we'll be able to pipe it in right here. Excellent job tonight by the Hoosiers. Also, make sure you go to assemblycall.com/subscribe, get on the email list, because we provide excellent post-game analysis by Andy Bottoms that you will want to get on, and only our subscribers get on that. Whew. All right, what a game. Let's get to some opening comments here. I'll go to Ryan first, and we'll get his rant, and then we'll go over to Andy for his Bottoms line. Guys, let's go around the horn.
Tonight, the story of the game, I was sitting at a bar with a few people who were watching, and they had said that, Indiana just turns the ball over too much, Indiana turns the ball over too much, Indiana turns the ball over too much, and only 7 turnovers tonight, 10 for Northwestern. I thought they took care of the ball. It was almost like they just respected having the basketball, as opposed to, some other games where it just seemed like, they would throw it away and think, oh, okay, we'll get it back. No, this was really impressive. The fact that they won and got out-rebounded, which really hasn't happened all year, getting out-rebounded. I was really impressed. 10 assists, 7 turnovers, and to come away with a 5-point win on the road is all of those are a big deal, and really happy for this team that they were able to get it done. I don't think a lot of people expected them to end up, winning this game and bounce back from all the turmoil that's been going on with, everything from the player, for Hannah Mascara-Perez suspension to the roof to, a couple losses in a row that probably shouldn't have been losses to, coming on the road and getting a win over a solid team that beat us at home. I was really impressed, and you're right. It wasn't the prettiest win, but at least they went in and got it done, and that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, and I want to go over to Andy real quick before we do that. Just to put this in context, because I know there will be the naysayers out there who will say, oh, look at the Indiana fans now cheering a win over Northwestern. These two should be taken for granted. Well, every game needs to be taken within its own context. And after the week that this program went through, and considering the fact, like you said, Ryan, that Northwestern beat us at home, this is a road game in the Big Ten, which we know is so hard. It's a game that it's okay to be excited about. I think it's okay to have some positive feelings about, as we are. All right, Andy, let's get your Bottoms line on tonight's IU victory.
Yeah, I think at this point I would cheer a win over Abilene Christian, who surprisingly did not make its way into IU's non-conference schedule. So for me, beating anyone at this stage and the way things have gone was great. The thing that stuck out to me, just kind of looking at the stats, was balance. You've got Sheehy, Williams, Vonleh, and Farrell all with 5 made field goals and all with 12 points. And I think, a lot of those guys had big shots in key moments or just made little plays here and there. But I thought it was a game where Yogi played well, but he didn't feel like he had to do everything as it has felt like so often this season. I think Vonleh had 11 shots. I don't remember the last time he got that many shots off. I thought they did a better job of trying to allow him space to face up instead of relying on him to get position in the post. And I feel like that's something that I brought up on one of the last couple of shows where at some point they have to adjust. He's not able to do that at this stage in his career, and so I thought they did a good job of letting him take advantage of his ability to put the ball on the floor, particularly with Ola guarding him. Williams, I thought, played his best game maybe since the Washington game back in November, and Sheehy, while some of the threes were awful, and the last one elicited a no, yes from me. He made some good plays and had a couple stretches where he really made key baskets, and so I thought that kind of balance is something we haven't seen. It's been hard at times this year to find two guys to be able to make shots and come up with plays, and I thought those four did tonight, and Williams especially to come off the bench and do it I thought was great, according to the clown who was on the call for the network. So good times.
Yeah, if you weren't following Andy on Twitter, he does not like Stephen Bardo very much, and frankly, there's not really a reason to. I mean, Stephen Bardo seems like a nice enough guy, but I think we've had enough games that he's done and seen his poor analysis work, and now he's combined with Josh Lewin to make it just sound like a Cubs game, which is terrible.
Yeah, that was Josh Lewin who kept saying he was coming off the bench, so I'm not sure if he's really that bad or like Bardo is just rubbing off on him. The favorite Bardo moment was clearly what an unselfish play by Jeff Howard to pass up the open three. That's the dumbest thing I think I've heard. Although he did say you played well.
Hey, you know what? That was an unselfish play. I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Jeff Howard wanted nothing to do with that ball. He could not get rid of it fast enough, and it was a smart play by him. I mean, he's not a three-point shooter.
We saw later he didn't want to take a 10-foot jump shot, so there's no way in hell he was shooting that three-pointer.
No.
Hey, you know what? He went to the Ryan Phillips School of Basketball. You two leave him alone.
Yes. Okay. I think that last three by Ryan really has him excited because he's shouting awfully loud tonight. Okay, so let's start breaking down some players. We definitely need to talk some more about Will Sheehy because we really got the full Will Sheehy experience. I mean, good Will, bad Will, the three-pointer that he made there at the end. The guy that I want to start out with, though, is Troy Williams. And Andy, I think you hit the nail on the head. I thought it was by far his best game against Washington when you consider the things that he did and the things that he didn't do. Troy Williams, we've talked about it all season, Andy. You've pointed out a lot that, he needs to understand what he does when he's playing well and what he does when he's not playing well. And when he's not playing well, he's turning the ball over. He's taking threes. He's, playing out of control. And tonight, I thought he really played within himself. He did not have a turnover. He had 12 points. I think 9 of them probably came in the first half. It's funny, I actually have on my notes. I was in the middle of typing Troy not providing much in the second half, and so I have Troy not much, and then on the next line, Troy assist to Noah. And it was a really terrific play he made where he drove in, and instead of forcing up a wild shot like we've seen him do a lot, he dumped it down to Noah. Noah scored. I thought it was a great I thought it really showed the growth that these two freshmen have made because it's a finish that we've seen Noah not make and it's a pass we've seen Troy not make. And for them to do it now, it shows growth from those two guys. But, Troy basically put on a dunk fest in the first half, which was great. He had that stretch there late in the second half that was terrific. I want to go to Ryan first, and Andy, I'll even let you expound on Troy too. But I thought he was really important early for Indiana, setting the tone. And then where he's really faded in the second half, so I thought he stepped up late in the game to make some good plays today.
Yeah, I thought it was his best all-around game since Washington. I think Andy's absolutely correct with that. It wasn't just the 12 points. It was his ability to impact the game on defense, distribute, do things like that, keep the offense flowing. I mean, that's something that gets lost with this team because there are so many young guys. They've only been running the offense for a few months and things like that. And I know some people think at this point of the season that shouldn't be an excuse, but there's a difference between running the offense and having to think about it and it having it just be second nature. For Yogi and Will, it's second nature at this point. For these freshmen, they have to think and where to move the ball, where to go. And I really thought he did a great job keeping the offense going in the second half. And look, if you don't have a shot, make sure you're moving it to the right spot so that somebody else can get something, and then you're going off and screening and you're moving, and so it's not stagnant. And we've seen that happen a lot in the second half of this season, is just a stagnant offense that isn't doing things. And I really thought that Troy kept things moving, and he really took his opportunities when he could and drove and moved, and he took a couple threes, but you know what? I'm okay with that because he was wide open on both of them. And I know people will say that I'm setting a double standard because of Will Sheehy's wide open threes, but no, there's a big difference. And Troy will become a better shooter as he gets older. And next year, if those threes he has that are wide open go down, we're going to be a completely different team. And I was proud of the way he played, how aggressive he was, both on offense and defense, and obviously in the first half, his finishing ability, we've said since the beginning of the year, he's an elite finisher when he gets near the basket. And so I was really happy with the way he did the other little things. I mean, we know what he can do near the basket. It's about getting that other stuff to work when he's 10, 15 feet away, maybe 18 feet away, and just keeping the offense going and moving and realizing that if he gives the ball up, he might get it back.
Yeah, and if you missed any of Troy Williams' dunks, follow Troy Williams _ on Twitter, because I'm sure he'll be retweeting them out as soon as Tom Crean is done with his post-game comments. All right, Andy, let's go over to you, though. Get some more comments on Troy, because, again, I agree. I thought he was just terrific tonight.
Yeah, I thought, for me, the only two shots he missed from the floor were the 2 3-pointers, and I think he's 3 for 25 from 3 on the year at this point. They were open. I'm not sure that maybe one as a pseudo heat check I could live with, but I mean, aside from that, I thought he's doing a really good job of moving off the ball and kind of filling in some of the things that we've watched Sheehy do over these last few years, and really cutting to the basket and taking advantage of his athletic ability. And at this stage in his career, that's what he needs to do. I think it's similar to what I said about Vonleh, where you have, they kind of are what they are for this season, I would say. So figure out what they do well and put them in situations where they can take advantage of that. And I thought Williams did a good job of putting himself in those positions tonight with, some nice cuts to the basket and just being active. And I think that's something we've seen from him a lot more lately. I know this week when I kind of did the analysis for the Big Ten so far, I mean, he was plus 11, which was the best of anybody going into the Purdue game, and that was a complete debacle on pretty much all fronts, and he had some horrific plus minus numbers in that one, but the numbers up to that point had really underscored how well he's played, and the fact that he's doing better, and the fact that I think I'd even like to see him play a little more. He played 23 minutes tonight. It looks like it's kind of hovering around what he's played lately, and I thought there were stretches in the second half where you like to see him in the game a little bit more. I could be, off base about that once I, look at some of the lineup stuff tomorrow. But I thought really a strong all-around game from him, and a guy who's, he's shooting over 56% on 2-pointers now for the season, and for a team that's shooting barely over 43%, at least coming into this game from 2 in Big Ten play, I think, having him be active around the rim. And quite honestly, if he gets it within 5 feet, he can pretty much dunk it from there, probably even further out than 5 feet. So just have to continue finding ways to let him excel with what his skill set is right now, and then look forward to the development of a more consistent jump shot, hopefully as early as next season.
Yeah, and Troy had 12 points. As Andy mentioned, the other 3 starters for Indiana that scored had 12 points. Austin Etherington started tonight. Didn't score. Austin, in case you forgot, in that first Northwestern game, had 6.6 boards, really played well. Didn't have anywhere near that production today as a starter. It was interesting, and we'll get to that topic here in a little bit. Before we talk about Yogi and Will, and there was one really key stretch in the second half where Northwestern cut it, I think, to 6, and those two, I believe, scored the next 7 points. I didn't jot it down on my notes, but I believe that was what happened. I want to talk about that stretch in a minute because I thought it was really important. Before we do that, though, I want to go to Andy because, and here's what I want to assess is how much do we take from this game, right? Because a lot of people, we're looking at this box score and we see, hey, Noah tied with Will for the team lead with 11 wanting, and he did. He looked aggressive. he scored in a variety of ways. He had a follow-up. He was facing up some. He was posting up some. I thought Indiana was creative in the way that they got him the ball. I think there were still some missed opportunities. There was one specific play I can remember where Evan Gordon got the ball on the wing, and he starts looking in. I mean, the ball's over his head. He's looking to pass it into the post. Noah has position, and he vacates it, like right as Evan's about to throw it. So you're still kind of dealing with some of those things with Noah in terms of just instinct and holding position and all of that. But, while he had, I think it was 17 points and 12 boards against Northwestern at home, he didn't do that tonight. He had 12 points and 8 boards, so he was a little more understated. But still, I thought a really solid game from him, just in terms of the variety of ways he was used and was able to score. But, Andy, let me ask you, is this just something that the matchup against Northwestern is going to manifest, where Noah's going to get these double-digit field goal attempts because of how Northwestern plays defense, or is there anything tonight we can see that maybe we can take forward that Noah's going to be a bigger part of the offense consistently going forward?
So for me, I'd say it's probably a little bit of both. I mean, you look back at his game log here, and he's taken double-digit shots twice since the Washington game on November 21st, and both those games were against Northwestern. So to a certain extent, it's obviously a little bit of Northwestern. But I do think tonight, like I said earlier, I thought the big change with him was that they really I won't say abandoned trying to get him the ball in the post, but I think they kind of varied the ways they tried to get him the ball. And I think, that's something I feel like we've talked about where, you'd love for him to be more aggressive and really seal guys off in the post and establish position and keep it. But I think we're at a point now where, we can feel somewhat comfortable in saying that that's probably something he's not going to be able to do consistently over the latter part of the year. But we also know that he's easily one of the team's best players, and they have to find ways to get him the ball. And I thought they did a really good job tonight, particularly with Ola, who's battling some ankle injuries and just not as mobile in general. And so they tried to, set up scenarios where he could take advantage of that, and he did a really good job of it. And then Northwestern went into his zone. And for the most part, aside from the one play toward the end with the Williams pass that you referenced, he did struggle to get the ball, and they struggled to find ways to really keep him involved. So I think it's going to be a consistent battle. I think it's a good sign that they seem like they did some things differently to get him the ball, but obviously consistency in any facet of the game with this team has been a challenge, but I do think that's something they have to take advantage of because he does have, from a mobility and even from just a pure ball handling standpoint, an advantage on a lot of guys who are going to be able to guard him. The key is trying to find ways to keep the spacing good enough so that when he tries to spin back the other way, there aren't two guys waiting on him because they have no respect for the guys they're guarding ability to shoot the ball. But I thought he did a nice job of, he hit Troy on that, that baseline cut toward the end. I think that's another part of his game you hope to see a little bit more of as he gets more attention. How can he become a better passer and things like that? So I probably fall a little bit in the middle where I thought there were some good things to take away from it, but I do think some of those can be attributed to the matchup. And even within this game, you still saw some of the old habits creep up.
Yeah, I think, honestly, we were one of the only places to talk about Cody Zeller's flaws as a freshman, and part of that was his inability to get post position and how the team might want to start looking to get him the ball 15 feet from the basket so he could do something with it. And I think also at the beginning of this year we talked about Noah and his inability to really carve out post position. And he might be a guy that you need to get the ball at the free throw line or the elbow and let him work with the ball because he is supremely talented. There's no question about his talent. But get him the ball in a space where he can work one-on-one on a guy, move the ball, sort of, use his ball handling skills, get by someone, use his quickness, and get to the hoop, as opposed to just being a traditional back-to-the-basket, scorer. His one-on-one abilities from about 10 to 15 feet away are what I would compare Cody Zeller's ability to run the floor. And so Cody Zeller got a lot of points just by outrunning people to the basket. I think Vonleh can get a lot of points just going by people or getting fouled and going to the free throw line if he gets the ball in space with an ability to work. Um, you look at Vonleh in the post, and he has honestly about a half a post move because his one post move just really isn't that great. It's the short jump hook that people can game plan for now and block shots and really overplay it. But I thought that tonight he really carved out his area sort of about by the free throw line. He made a couple moves. Sometimes they didn't result in a bucket or a foul, but he was able to at least have somewhere that the team could.
Oh, we might have lost Ryan. Okay, let's hop.
Am I here?
Okay, we're gonna mute Ryan real quick. Yeah, Ryan, go reset yourself. All right, Andy, let's pick this up here real quick. Let's keep talking about. Actually, let's move on from Vonleh here for a second, and we'll let Ryan finish out his comments in a second. I want to talk real quick about the stretch of the game that I thought really was the difference. You know, Indiana wins this game tonight by 5. I misspoke earlier. It was 61-56 for Northwestern. Got that kind of crap bucket there at the end. And the stretch that I thought really won it for Indiana, that was the difference, is a place where they've really struggled before, which is, you know, the game was tied at 30 at the end of the first half. Indiana's got the ball. They take a timeout. They get a good shot, get a bucket, go up 32-30, and then they come out in the second half and really have kind of a middling first possession. Didn't really look comfortable. Was about to be a turnover. Northwestern ended up knocking the ball out of bounds. Indiana ends up getting it back, scoring, and then they go on that 7-2, 9-2 run to start the second half, and that really built the cushion. Andy, what did you see different from Indiana during that run that was, because, again, we've seen that be the place where they've really lost some of these road games, but tonight I really think it was the place where they won it.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute there. I definitely thought, getting a basket out of a timeout, I think is something that, I don't feel like we've seen a ton this year, and maybe that's overblown, but I thought that was a big play. If nothing else, it was just in contrast to what we'd seen in some of these other games. So I know, at least thinking back to, 2 of these last 3, that Minnesota game, I think they had a couple turnovers right there toward the end and really let Minnesota shave a few points off the lead. The Purdue game had the weird, had the bad foul on the when Purdue was trying to get a defensive rebound and then gave up the tip in on the missed free throw. And so, I thought it at least gave the team some, positive momentum. And I know we've talked a lot about how things can snowball a little bit, for this team when things don't go well. And, those things kind of carried themselves over into the second half versus, today, to end on a positive note, diagram a play, get something good out of that timeout and go in with the lead in the first half where, neither team had really played particularly well, but it was nice to be able to go in with the lead and some positive momentum. And then just the second half just seemed to really carry over that activity level. They're a lot more crisp, it seemed like, in terms of, ball movement and really being decisive and knowing what they wanted to do on offense. And I think, that's one thing where we've seen so much that, just passing the ball around the perimeter and kind of waiting on, Yogi typically to make a play. Just seemed like things were more crisp there, and they really came out, and played well. And I honestly don't remember the last time that the team got off to a good start in the second half, and maybe just a confidence thing, and things started to snowball in the right direction this time as opposed to the other way around.
All right, I think Ryan's back now. If you want to finish up your comment about Noah.
Yeah, I was just saying that I think that some teams have been able to overplay his sort of short jump hook. And I think the ability to get him the ball 10, 15 feet from the basket and make a play is going to make him that much of a better basketball player, and it's going to help the team a lot. That's really it. I think that obviously we love Noah. He's a great player, great kid. But I think that you've got to play to his strengths, as Andy was saying, at this point of the season, and really, work to get him the ball where he's best, most effective working with it.
Okay, so obviously as soon as this game ended, I was pumped because Indiana's won. It feels like it's been so long since we've had a victorious show that we've been talking about here, and so it was good to win. now that I've we've been talking for a little while, had a few minutes to think about this. Andy, let me play devil's advocate a little bit and take the alternate look at this game, which is, you're playing a Northwestern team that's been struggling. Obviously they were kind of the hot thing in the Big Ten there for a little while, and they've been replaced by Nebraska now as the ascendant Big Ten team, and they're coming back to the pack. They didn't have Deshaun Cobb. Even Ola was a game time decision, and he ends up, as much as we've talked about Noah Vonleh, Ola statistically ends up outplaying him with 17 points and 11 rebounds. So let me put it to you, Andy. Again, it's a road win on the Big Ten. No one's going to ever apologize for winning a game on the road in the Big Ten, but how impressive of a win is this? How much does this really tell us about Indiana? Or is this just kind of a momentary breather in what is going to continue being a brutal February for this team?
I don't know. I think that's a little bit tough to answer too. For this team to beat anybody on the road at this point with how things have gone, I hate to downplay any of it. Cobb is a guy who scores a decent amount of points for Northwestern, but he's not necessarily the most efficient guy around. Just kind of looking at some of his numbers on Pomeroy, his offensive ratings, 97.6, which is below average. As most of their players' offensive ratings are, they only have one guy who was over 100 coming into this game, which is pretty rough. So, I think in that regard, it did take another scorer off, but it also really gave additional playing time, at least up front, to Trey Demps, who, I think IU remembers all too well, what he did to them toward the end of that game. And, so it's definitely a factor. You look back at some of Cobb's recent games. He had 23 against Minnesota, 22 against Michigan State. But they lost both those games, and they've been on a bit of a down streak anyway. And so I think some of the same things you'd say with him out are probably the same things you'd say if he had played the game. You'd say, well, Northwestern had lost 4 games coming in. They've really struggled since they were 5-5, and maybe it's not that big a deal. So I guess I don't read too much into it, and quite honestly, at this point, this IU team needs to get whatever confidence it can get, regardless of the circumstances. So it isn't great, but I don't know that Northwestern is a team where, based on the way they play, that you're probably going to blow out and beat by a lot more than this, no matter who's playing. And it probably would have been a fairly similar game in terms of the score and tempo and all those kinds of things. So could it have made a difference? Potentially, but I don't know that Cobb is such a world beater that it's completely a difference in the game, and really at this point for this team, I think we'll pretty much take anything we can get.
Yeah, I think honestly, after the Penn State meltdown, the Hunter Perea news, and the Purdue game, that last week was the low point of the season. Then plus you have the roof falling literally at Assembly Hall. That was the low point of the season, and so the fact that they were able to get a road win on, at any point after all the crap they've been through is absolutely a positive. I think that, it's just such a big deal for these kids to have come together and gone on the road and won. I don't care who they're playing. The fact that they beat Northwestern, it's a team that's lost a bunch in a row, but at the same time, so at Indiana, and if you take out that Michigan game where they really stepped up to the opportunity and played extremely well, they've lost 4 out of 5, and to go into Northwestern with all the crap that's been going on, with all the stuff that's been written, with the roof caving in, all that stuff. The fact that they were able to go in and win is big for this team, regardless of who is playing. So I think it's a great win. We'll see how they play against Wisconsin now. God, I hope they win, since I live in Wisconsin. I'm gonna have to hear about it for the next year if they don't. But at the same point, it was just a really nice win. It might not qualify as a big win, but it was a nice win to get on the road.
Hey, Ryan, how many times since we beat Wisconsin and Bloomington do you think Bo Ryan has woken up in a cold sweat with Tom Crean's hands clapping in his face? How much do you think he's just been waiting for this game in Madison?
You're assuming it hasn't been every single morning since. And by the way, you know how many times my Wisconsin fan friends have brought up their basketball team since we beat them? 0.
Okay, well, that's good.
In the year before we beat them, it was every single freaking day.
Yeah,
So I'm just really happy
I'm
about that.
sure. Well, okay, we will worry about that later, though, because tonight we're celebrating an IU win. Now, Andy, I want to go to you for this. There's a chance that we might be burying the lead tonight because we've talked about Troy, who is very good. We've talked about Noah, who is always a hot topic. But the two leaders of this team, Yogi Ferrell and Will Sheehy, again, they joined Troy and Noah in having 5 made field goals and scoring 12 points. And I really thought that though the volume numbers, the cumulative numbers for these two guys were not huge, where they did their work, where they picked their spots was tremendous. There was, again, I mentioned this earlier, there was a stretch in the second half where Northwestern was able to get it down to a 5-6 point game. And I believe Yogi hit a 3, and then I think Will scored on 2 of the next 3 possessions, hit a couple of mid-range jumpers, stop, dribbling the ball all over the place and turn the ball over, hit a couple mid-range J's. It got the lead back up to a 9-10 point deficit, lead over Northwestern that we were then able to carry out. And, of course, the late 3 that Will hit was huge. So I thought while Yogi and Will weren't overwhelming, they picked their spots really well. Now, they did have 5 of the team's 7 turnovers, so it wasn't all positive for those two guys. But, Will also played very good defense. Drew Crawford for Northwestern had 9 points. I believe he only had 2 points in the second half. And I know there were a number of times where Will was on him, and if you were watching those guys very closely during dead balls, Will was getting up in his face and kind of annoying him and just doing Will Sheehy things. And so I thought those guys, I thought their contributions were very big tonight because I thought in big moments they were poised and they would not let things that have happened to this team in road collapses past and even home collapses past happen. And so I thought overall, despite some ups and downs, it was a good effort for those two guys.
Yeah, it's interesting. Kind of looking through some of the stats and when they made plays. They actually right around. Let me look and see if I can actually pull this back up. But yeah, they made that series of plays that you talked about. They had with 8:47 left, Yogi hit a 3, and that was actually the last points he scored in the game. And if you had, based on most games this season, you told me that Yogi Ferrell goes scoreless over the last 8 minutes and 46 seconds, I would tell you that IU would lose probably by quite a bit. I think that speaks to a couple things. I think, one, the fact that he really didn't force shots at all. And I think when Northwestern went to the zone, I think there were times when, you may have seen that at other times this year where, he's trying to, feels that pressure to be the guy that can, make threes and kind of be the zone buster out there. I thought he did a good job of really not forcing shots. He only had 10 for the game. So, he doesn't score the last 8:46, but immediately after that, he made those two shots. Then he took what somebody said to me on Twitter was a heat check 3. I guess that is the explanation for it. And then made the last one. But he had 9 points in the second half. He scored 9 of the last 23 for IU based on my quick math here. And that was after he scored the first 3 points, which took us pretty far into the game, sadly. But he scored those first 3 and then really didn't score again until he put up 9 in the last 14 minutes or so. So thought a really good game for him. And it's interesting, kind of looking at the game log for Yogi. He took 10 shots. He's taken that or fewer hardly ever since the Big Ten started. But he had 10 attempts against Michigan in what was his breakout game, if you will. There we had the 27 points and just kind of that amazing performance. He only had 10 shots in that game. He had 7 shots in the Illinois win. So you look at that, and I think. It's not a case where you take that and say, wow, he doesn't need to shoot as much. I mean, he clearly does need to shoot because he's easily this team's best player. They rely on him to do a lot, but I think he can be so much more effective when there are other guys who are involved, like there were tonight, and you had different guys stepping up and making plays, and I thought that was huge for him tonight. So definitely don't know that we need to get to a point where he's only taking 10 shots a game, since he's one of the only reliable shooters on the team, but I did think he picked his spots really well. He hit those couple, mid-range jumpers and hit a big 3 in the second half. And I thought overall was still a good game from him, even though the scoring numbers weren't gaudy like we've become accustomed to.
Yeah, I thought, since I'm the resident Will Sheehy expert, I really thought he played a very good game. All 4 of his threes, I just wanted to slam my head into the bar at the place I was at. But he made the last one, and it was, like Andy said earlier, just sort of a no, yes, shot. But I thought he did a lot of Will Sheehy things. I thought he was aggressive on the boards. I thought he, dove towards the basket a lot. I thought that, he grabbed some steals. He was, the all-around guy that we really want him to be constantly and that we know he could be. And he's always going to shoot ill-advised threes. That's just who he is. And, it's getting to the point where it's like, oh, Will Sheehy, every time he does it. But because, you can't get mad about it. If you get mad about it, you drive yourself insane. Trust me, I know. But I thought that he played a very good game tonight. He led from the front as a senior, played great defense, and really was aggressive and attacked the basket. Even when he was missing shots from inside the three-point line, I thought that for the most part they were solid attempts. As far as Yogi goes, Andy's exactly right. If you had told me he only scored 12 points, I would have thought it was definitely a loss. But I thought he did a good job distributing. There were a couple of his shots that, he just went Yogi Ferrell on where I just sat there and shook my head that he made them. But, that's who he is. He's the guy we can rely on when the chips are down. And I thought he played very well tonight, but also played within himself and didn't try and force too much. And, kept the offense moving and played very good defense as well.
Okay, let's go to a quick assembly call bench roundtable, because I thought the bench made some positive contributions tonight. And so, Ryan, I know you want to talk about Jeremy Hollowell, so we'll save him for you. Andy, you can choose from Jeff Howard, Devin Davis, Evan Gordon, or do the grab bag and discuss all three, because I'm going to talk about Stan Robinson, who he really struggled in that first Northwestern game, and he wasn't great today. The one bucket that he did make was a Stan Robinson whirling dervish special, where he just kind of drove in and threw it up, and you don't know how it went in, but he did. It's just kind of Stan's gift that he has, that he can make shots like that. He was one of the guys who was able to get to the free throw line. He led Indiana with 6 free throws. He only made 3 of them. But I thought, he was able to get to...
One of the misses he airballed. Let's not let that slide by.
Okay, well, there were lots of airballs tonight. Troy airballed the 3, I know. Noah airballed the shot. We won, so all the freshmen got an airball. It's okay.
He just wanted to make sure he maintained his 50% mark. He didn't want to leave anything to chance. We've all seen guys attempt to intentionally miss free throws and they go in. So he was at 3 for 5 at that point, and he just didn't want to leave anything to chance. I think that's clearly good. He's playing by the percentages.
Right. Okay. Everybody's got.
It's admirable.
Yes. I was trying to make this a positive about Stan Robinson. You guys are hijacking my segment here. So Stan, yes, he airballed the free throw, but he had his 5 points. He also had 3 boards, 2 assists, 2 steals. I thought he was really active, and he only turned the ball over once during his time in there. And so, and the reason why I want to bring this up is this was not one of those magical Stan Robinson performances, not one that we're ever going to remember. But I thought he did some important things while he was in there. And it was good to see him be aggressive, even in a game against a defense that he's going to struggle against. That's a defense that's kind of set up to stop a guy like him. He found a way to make an impact. And so on a night where we're lauding Troy Williams, where we're lauding Noah Vonleh for what they did, Stan Robinson, coming back off the bench, because remember, he didn't start. Austin Etherington started. And so we'll see if this can kind of jumpstart Stan and what happens moving forward in terms of the lineup. But I thought even though the numbers aren't overwhelming, did a solid job while he was in there. Okay, Andy, we'll go to you. You can talk about the other 3, and then I know that Ryan has some special love that he wants to give to Jeremy Hollowell.
That's really awesome. Thanks a lot for leaving me these 3. This is outstanding.
Okay,
I've been spending the whole time you were talking, trying to come up with something, and I haven't been able to do it.
All right, here's why I did this. Okay, I was strategic because one of and actually we got 3 or 4 of these tweets when it happened, is why was Jeff Howard out there playing late? And you even mentioned it. We love Jeff Howard's hustle, but when you're late in a game on the road in the Big Ten like this, when you have a guy who is afraid to even take a 10-foot jump shot, right? How do you justify having him out there? And so if you would like a lead-in that gives you a kind of direction to take this with, you can go from there.
So now you're just setting me up to be a jerk. I see how this is going. All right, I get it. Fine. That's fine. No, I think I thought Davis actually, had he not gotten those couple fouls, I thought he had a nice post move, and I think somebody commented on Twitter that he finally had somebody that he was bigger than, or at least the same size, to make a move at the post. So I thought that was a nice play from him. But got in foul trouble pretty quick. Gordon for me didn't turn the ball over, didn't do anything spectacular, but made a three in the first half, and I thought generally played well and tried to get the ball into Vonleh. I thought he made a fairly good effort to do that regularly. So I thought he had an okay but unspectacular game, and yeah, I mean I guess Howard. The big thing for me was that as unselfish he was in the first half to not shoot that three-pointer. You have to be a little bit selfish and shoot that 10-foot jump shot there down the stretch. But hard to bag on him too much. Had a couple fouls and that turnover there, but I think that's more of trying to figure out. You got to have people in the game at that point that are comfortable taking that shot. I don't know that I was shocked to see him not take it, but also just kind of makes you wonder why he was in the game at that point. But not a huge point of contention. I thought those guys were all solid but unspectacular.
And Andy's hate of Jeff Howard continues. Okay.
That's right. That's how it works.
All right. So Ryan, let's talk real quick about Jeremy Hollowell. And here's the thing. I thought in the first half, especially early, I thought we were seeing some more of that good Jeremy Hollowell. I thought he was active. And I was watching him on defense, and you could kind of see a lot of times on defense, especially off the ball, you see a lot of lackadaisical play, not focus. I saw a guy with a head on a swivel, looking left and right, keeping track of where the ball was. I thought again, and this is the fourth game in a row, where I thought when he was out there, he was really active. Now, he's still, he's not totally confident yet. He's still kind of getting himself back in there offensively, but he did make a few moves tonight, and I think he had one bucket. He was 1 for 3. He did have a couple steals, a couple rebounds, but I really thought in the first half, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but in the first half, it was kind of it's like a secondary transition almost, where Yogi drove in, set up Jeremy for a perfect layup, and he just kind of like boinked it off the side of the rim, and it really just should have been an easy layup. And I thought his confidence waned a little bit after that. He still did some good things in the second half, but he also, whereas in the first half he was in that first rotation off the bench. Jeff Howard kind of took that spot in the second half, and so I thought some positive momentum he built in the first half. He seemed to lose it a little bit, but still overall I thought another solid performance from him as a guy who is still trying to work his way back, just to where the coaching staff trusts that he's going to do the right things on the court. And he continues to do a lot of those things. I mean, we didn't have any of those facepalm, him just dribbling into a steal moments. He had no turnovers. So, again, not a spectacular performance, but another positive game, I think, as he continues to kind of put just some positive efforts back to back to back.
Yeah, I think that with Jeremy Hollowell at this point, and we've been there since he got benched, you've got to look at baby steps, and it's got to be a slow progression to getting to trust him again, whether it's us or the coaching staff or anybody, or even himself. And I loved that he came out on fire. He came out looking to score. He came out looking to be aggressive, both on offense and on defense, as you mentioned. His demeanor and his body language was so different. And he's not going to be a 20-point scorer overnight. It's going to take some time, and it's going to take, him getting the chance to prove himself before any of that happens. Because he's got to prove himself to himself. It's a confidence thing, and I thought he was great tonight in limited minutes. Yeah, he missed some layups. He, clanged some 2 shots off the rim, but I was really appreciative of his effort. He was constantly going after the ball and constantly sort of pressing forward and really trying to make something happen. And that's just a different guy than we saw at the beginning of the year. So, save for, 1 or 2 games. So I think that the benching has been great for him. And hopefully it's one of those things that not only lights a fire under him for the rest of the season, but he spends the off season pushing himself too and changing the way he plays. So again, I thought it was just he obviously wasn't a game-changing performer tonight, but it's nice to see sort of a slow progression to getting better and playing harder.
Okay, so let's, again, good win for the Hoosiers tonight, 61-56. However you want to slice this, it's a road win in the Big Ten. That is good. And it's not a road win that Indiana backed into. This is a road win that we went out and took. We played well. We made big shots when we needed to, made big plays when we needed to. Our biggest Achilles heel all year has been turnovers. We limited those, and that's what helped us win a game where we actually got out-rebounded. Who would have thought that? But a really solid effort tonight for the Hoosiers, and one that I think we can all be proud of, be happy about, and hopefully that helps us build momentum going forward. That is going to be very important because now coming up on the schedule, we have a date on Tuesday at Wisconsin. We then play at home against Iowa on Thursday in the makeup game. And then we play either Saturday or Sunday against Ohio State. Actually, I think that game's on a Sunday. Andy can correct me here in a moment. Against Ohio State. So basically 3 of the teams that are sitting ahead of us right now in the standings. And if you need a quick standings check, Indiana sits at 5-8. We are tied with the Boilermakers for 8th place in the Big Ten, with Minnesota 1 game ahead at 6-9. Then Nebraska, and they're at 7-6, been playing great basketball. Ohio State, Iowa, Wisconsin as we go up the ladder. So, Andy, let me go over to you now. Let's kind of reset things, where they stand for Indiana. Obviously, we're not even going to mention the bubble. We're not going to talk about any of those things. But let's just, let's kind of take this. We had this 4-game stretch in 8 days, right? Well, we got the first one. We got that victory. What's reasonable to expect now over the rest of this kind of quick 3-game stretch at Wisconsin, at home against Iowa, at home against Ohio State? As you look at it, knowing these teams, knowing what you've seen from Indiana, what's the expectation, knowing full well that when it comes to Indiana and when it comes to the Big Ten, expectations mean absolutely nothing? Andy, you're on mute. You might want to turn the microphone on.
I will consider it.
Why don't you just blame it on Jeff Howard? Because,
yeah, well, probably his fault. Could be anyone, but probably him. I think Wisconsin. You look at, if you looked at this game a few weeks ago, probably had a completely different feel for it than you do now. I mean, IU started a stretch by beating them of where they lost 5 out of 6 games. And then they've come back to win 5 in a row, including beating Michigan State at home, and then the last 2 road wins against Michigan and Iowa. So I think that's every bit as tall of an order as we probably thought it would be heading into the season. And so that's probably the one that on the road against in a place IU has tended to struggle against, a team IU has really struggled with, doesn't necessarily feel like the best situation to keep momentum going. But I guess you never know, and certainly if there should be at least a little bit of confidence for this team having beaten them already. But that one of the 3 seems the least winnable. And then you look at the others, at least coming home. IU's fared well at home against good teams. I'm not going to say fared well at home against everyone, because clearly that isn't true. But against in some of these bigger games when the crowd really turns out, and prime time or nationally televised games, this team's played pretty well at home. And I think Iowa's one where on the surface you look at them and you feel like they should be better than they are, but they've really struggled to execute down the stretch of games as they did today against Wisconsin. And so you play them tough for a while in a game that will likely be an up-tempo one that may mask some of IU's offensive challenges. And so you get that toward the end of the game, and maybe they start to feel a little bit of that pressure, and that's a winnable game. And Ohio State, I think, probably hinges a little bit on how the other 2 go. I think if IU's able to split those 2, particularly winning the Iowa game, they come into that game with some confidence. The struggle there is how good Ohio State really is defensively, and how challenged at times, at least, IU is on the offensive end. So that's one area where you've got to be a little bit concerned in that game. But I think really I have a better feel for I guess my thoughts on that one based on how IU comes out and plays in these next 2. But certainly a daunting final stretch for IU when you look at these games. 4 of the last 5 games against teams in Pomeroy's top 20. That's at least as of what they're ranked right now, and the other against the Nebraska team that is actually maybe not looking great for an NCAA tournament bid, but it's not out of the question for them at this point. So a game that's going to mean an awful lot to them.
And Ryan, give me your thoughts on these games. I mean, how have your expectations kind of shifted for this team? I mean, what to you is going to constitute success both over these next 3 games and also just over the rest of the season as we look to close this out with positive momentum and hopefully an NIT berth for this crew?
Honestly, who the hell knows? Honestly, with this team, who knows? they certainly can beat Wisconsin. They certainly can beat Iowa, and Ohio State has proven that they can be beaten all the time. This year, and those three games are really going to be huge for this team. I mean, if we can get 2 wins out of Wisconsin, Iowa, and Ohio State, it changes the season completely. But, I mean, the way we play at the Kohl Center and then getting Iowa, who's an up-tempo team. I mean, the Iowa game, I think, looks like the one that the Hoosiers can win. It's at home. As Andy was saying, at home this team plays a different game than it does on the road. And Iowa's an up-tempo team, which kind of plays into Indiana's hands. But looking at this stretch of games, this last 5 to wrap the season, I really can't even make a prediction. I mean, we've been all season up and down, and really, it's just so hard to do. I mean, obviously, we know we can beat Michigan. We've beaten them already. Nebraska, we completely outplayed and lost to. So this last 5 is going to be really telling. Has this team actually turned it around, or was tonight's game just an aberration? It's going to be really interesting to see what happens.
It will be, and frankly, predicting Big Ten games and talking about what to expect is foolhardy. We've seen that in the Big Ten all year. Expect the unexpected. I mean, Nebraska goes into Michigan State and wins, and Northwestern wins in Assembly Hall earlier this year. I mean, all the things that you think are kind of crazy and aren't going to happen, they're happening. So we just got to, we have to take these one game at a time. And to me, that's a positive with this team. I know that the season's been a disappointment. We're 15-11. We're 5-8 in the Big Ten. We are way behind the 8 ball for any NCAA tournament bid. We're just looking to kind of right now finish with some positive momentum going into the Big Ten tournament and hopefully find a way to get into some postseason play. But who knows what can happen? I mean, whereas before, even last year, it would have seemed like going to Wisconsin and winning. Oh, my God, that sounds, I mean, we even thought when, we match up against Wisconsin in the Big Ten tournament, or we talked about how last year's team, if they somehow match up with Wisconsin in the NCAA tournament, they're toast. Well, now we've beaten Wisconsin at home, and that doesn't seem quite so daunting. So I guess the lesson is, who knows what to expect, not just from this team, but every game in this conference. So, let's just take it one game at a time, see what happens. And with this brutal 4-game stretch, we got the first one, so why not just go get the second one and then see what happens after that. And we'll see if Indiana can do that Tuesday night. And again, Indiana wins tonight, 61-56 over Northwestern. You're listening to the Assembly Call. I'm Jared Morris, your host. Let's go around the horn now with my co-hosts for some final thoughts. We'll go with Andy, then Ryan, then I'll close this up.
Yeah, I guess, for me, I think we're probably past the point of figuring out what we can and cannot learn from any given performance by this team. So, I guess tonight I just focus on the balance and the continued good play of Troy Williams. I really thought, he was a huge difference maker in the game, especially in the first half with some of the dunks, and made a big basket there in the second half with that cut to the basket where Noah, found him along the baseline. And I think if you want to, I don't know that we certainly don't want to give up on this season, but if you want to look forward to things going forward, I think you start to, one of the places you start is with what his development might be and what he can become. And I thought, tonight was a really good step and really, something he's shown over the course of the Big Ten season that he's, making progress and really making plays and a positive guy to have out on the floor. And hopefully see a little bit more of him down the stretch and some more highlight reel dunks, which can only be a good thing for this team. So I thought overall a good balanced performance. Didn't ask Yogi to do too much, and a lot of guys stepped up and made plays instead of standing around and waiting for somebody else to do it.
Ryan, over to you.
You know what? At this point, it was a win. And I think a week ago, after what happened last Saturday, we won't discuss it, but what happened last Saturday, I think we'd all be very happy with a win in their next game. And so really just, it was a win, and that's really all I can say at this point is that at least they came away with a win, regardless of what you think of Northwestern or what you think of this IU team. Getting wins a big deal, especially on the road in the Big Ten. And so it was really nice to see them come together, fight hard, lead essentially the entire second half and just pull away and get a win. That's a big deal for this young team.
I agree. And like you guys have said, I don't know what this tells us about the rest of the season. I just know that, sometimes we look at things from a single season basis. And I think we knew at the beginning of the year that, maybe this team is a fringe NCAA tournament team if things go well. We hope they finish in the top half of the Big Ten. Those were the goals. We thought that was possible with this team. And right now, neither one of those is really looking likely, and maybe it gets there. But we kind of knew that it was a bit of a 2-year plan after the mass exodus from last year, the scoring, the leadership, everything that we lost. And so I think it's important. This is what really annoyed me about the whole conversation after the ceiling panel fell at Assembly Hall. It's like everybody's talking about how, well, this game's so important for Iowa because they're playing for the Big Ten. Well, the game's important for us too, as are all of these games, because these are still building block games for a young team. And so you can look at a game like this, you beat Northwestern, they don't have Deshaun Cobb, yada, yada, blah, 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 but there's still some good that comes from it. Troy Williams has a big game on the road and plays poised and shows growth. And Noah Vonleh does some good things. And Yogi Ferrell and Will Sheehy, I thought, and especially Yogi, a sophomore who's a big building block of this program moving forward, steps up, shows some leadership, plays within himself. There's good things to take from these games. And so whether or not it translates into a surprise NCAA tournament berth because of a crazy run at the end of the year, or, the team stubs their toe and just ends up playing in the NIT, whatever, each game is important for this program moving forward as a building block, building for next season, right? And again, we all kind of knew this was a 2-year rebuilding process. We hope this year was going to be a little better than it's been. But hey, if we can finish with some positive momentum, some really good things happen, a few chips fall, Noah stays, who knows what happens next year. These can all be games that really build towards a better next year. So they're all important. And I would just stress that everybody, obviously continue supporting this team, but don't give up on these games like they don't matter. They matter, and that's why a win like tonight is important. And Indiana got it, 61-56, a huge confidence builder for this team going into this stretch against now teams that are all above them in the Big Ten standings. This was a really big win to get. The Hoosiers got it, and I'm excited. And, gives you a little more confidence going into Madison and then coming home against Iowa. Let's split these. I think that's really important. If we can somehow find a way to split, I think we'd all take that. And then you go into that game against Ohio State, really if you win it, with a chance to maybe do something in terms of getting up into that 6th, 7th, even 5th spot in the Big Ten. Who knows what can happen from there. And in this topsy-turvy, crazy, unpredictable Big Ten season, you'd be wise not to rule anything out. So thank you all for listening live tonight. I'm Jared Morris, your host on the Assembly Call. Make sure you go to assemblycall.com/subscribe and get on our email list. It's a late night tonight, so I can't promise that Andy will have an email for you tomorrow about this game. But if he does, I will send it out tomorrow. Typically, we do have some great in-depth analysis in our emails for subscribers after the games. But get on that. You'll definitely want to be on there. And then bookmark assemblycall.com/live. We go live as soon as every game ends to bring you instant reaction of the game that you just saw. Fortunately, tonight, what you saw was a victory. A fun one for Indiana. They win by 5. Let's all enjoy it, and then we'll be back here on Tuesday night. Have a good one, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. We'll see you Tuesday. I'm Jared Morris for the Assembly Call. Adios.